Thank you so much for coming to the kickoff meeting for Project Parkway for the 10-11 school year. We've got, how about that? A good night planned for tonight. I think we probably won't be here the entire time tonight, so I know that'll be good news to some of you who have a lot of other things going on. So, my name is Paul Tandy, and I want to, before we get started, I'd like to ask in the room, how many of you participated in Project Parkway last year, if you could raise your hand? Wow, okay, probably 2/3 or more. Okay, so then the rest of you, I'm assuming this is your first meeting. If it's your first meeting, would you raise your hand? Okay, so quite a few. So we're going to talk tonight a little bit about, to recap what we did last year in a minute and get you up to speed, and then talk about what we have to do this year. Before I do that, I would like to introduce to you the Interim Superintendent of Parkway, Dr. Don Senti, who many of you, if you've been in the district a while, will remember Dr. Centi. He served at all levels of the district, from teacher all the way up to superintendent. He spent 25 years of his career in Parkway before leaving to be superintendent of the Clayton School District. He recently retired, and the board was able to convince him to come back one more time to help Parkway on an interim basis as we search for a permanent superintendent. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Don Senti.
Thank you, Paul. I've been able to say hello to a lot of the staff, but not to some of the parents, and I've met old friends up here already, at 2 or 3 or 4 just coming to the mic. So it's kind of unusual to, I actually grew up in Parkway. I opened West, it was called West Junior High when it opened in 1971, and Parkway South Campus in 1976. That was called Campus because it was a 6 through 12, maybe a 7 through 12 school that we all worried about when it opened, whether it would work or not. And then we called them little kids, didn't want to leave when it was time to go off to their own middle school. So it's kind of like Rip Van Winkle, I guess, waking up and seeing some people that I haven't seen for a long time. And stranger yet, my son is sitting right over there in the audience. He's an assistant principal in Northeast. So it's good to see all of you. I read a clipping. I was interim superintendent once before I became the superintendent. And I said in that clipping that the most important thing that we had to do in the first few years of my last superintendency is to do the long-range strategic planning process. And so that's what we did. And the difference between that one and this one is this is way more sophisticated, much better thought out and so forth than the one we did way back then. So thank all of you who have participated in the past, and I hope we'll get some new volunteers tonight. So it's nice to be back, and I'm excited to participate with you in Project Parkway. So now, Chris Jacob, the Vice President of the Board, will greet you and introduce the board members.
Thank you, Dr. Senti. Well, I don't know how you changed that so quickly. Bruce would have been here, and he had an emergency in his family, and so I'm filling in for him. We do welcome all of you who are here for the first time, and welcome back those who participated in Project Parkway in the beginning. We're both honored and pleased to have you here as part of the great work that we're trying to do here for our children, for our kids. Let me introduce first the members of the board that happen to be here tonight. Dee Mogerman is up here in the front. Beth Feldman. Helen Castile, I know I saw you. I know she's here. Okay, way in the back. Thank you. And some of you might remember one of my children was under the tutelage of Dr. Sorrentino, who's here in the back. We feel that Project Parkway is almost as important to us as a 7-member board as it is finding a new superintendent for our school district. We're excited about the work that's been done. We're looking forward with great anticipation to the work that will be accomplished in the next few phases. We're excited. We feel that we have worthy ambassadors to send forward that will help us with this great work. so that we can secure for our children the great educational learning that they deserve, so that they can step into this challenging and remarkable world that's going to be greeting them in the near future. So without really saying anything more, we just want to thank you for being here, and we look forward to the work that will be accomplished over the next several months as we go forward with the framework that's been established and what we need to do now. So thank you again for being here, and we welcome your ideas and your work in the year ahead. Thank you very much.
Okay, before we get into what we're going to do tonight, we wanted to spend just a few moments to reflect on what we accomplished last year, particularly for those who weren't involved, and talk a little bit about the timeline for this year for both the general membership of Project Parkway and the steering committee. So with that, let me just begin with a little bit about Project Parkway. What is Project Parkway? It's a new governance system for Parkway. And we, in this room, the collective work of this organization here, ultimately reports back to the Board of Education. So we essentially work for them based upon the goals and the plan that they ultimately will approve. We opened it up to anyone in the community. Anyone can participate. Sometimes the committees get a little large, but that is by design because we didn't want to turn anyone away. We felt like we wanted to honor everyone's time. If you had the time to give, we want to take it. And so fortunately for us, we've had a large number of people volunteer. We have over 400 people on the list. I think we have a couple of hundred here tonight. And on any given night, this is about what we end up having. So for those of you who are new, and our charge is essentially right now, our charge is to develop the 5-year, or as Dr. Centi mentioned, the strategic plan for Parkway. In schools, we're required to do that every 5 years by the state of Missouri. You'll hear people talk about it, refer to it as a CSIP, CSIP. That's the Comprehensive School Improvement Plan. It's a fancy name, but basically it's your 5-year plan. And for Parkway, we are getting ready to develop ours for the 2011 through 2016 school years. And so Project Parkway will develop the plan, and then our work really doesn't end there. In a way, it sort of just begins, because then we have to monitor the implementation of it and make recommendations as we go along. Probably the size and scope of Project Parkway will drop down once we develop the plan, and then as we're monitoring it, and then it'll probably get larger again down the road as we get ready to develop the next 5-year plan. As I mentioned, we do have a steering committee who has devoted and continues to devote hours and hours and hours of work to help support Project Parkway. And what I'd like to do just briefly is ask those in this room who are on the Project Parkway steering committee, if you would please stand and just let us recognize you for just a minute. Thank you. So for the timeline, as I mentioned, the plan we're developing is for the fall of 2011. So we have to submit that to the school board for their approval sometime this coming spring, for them to approve it so we can begin implementation in the fall. So what did we get done last year? Well, those of you who were on Project Parkway, you know we had 30 subcommittees. We were able to have 30 because we had so many volunteers. And what that enabled us to do is conduct a very comprehensive audit of the district. If you've had a chance to go to the Project Parkway website and you can look at the data that were collected last year and what we call the needs assessment, you will be amazed. And we learned a lot about the district. We learned a lot of good things, and we learned some areas that we needed to work on. Most of the findings from last year are being incorporated or will be incorporated into the plan. There were some other pieces of the work from last year, though, that the school board said we either need to study that a little bit more before we decide what to do with that particular topic, or there were some where they said, we really need to get that into the plan, but we've got to get it on the fast track and find a way to fix it quickly. And so those turned into task forces for this fall. So what the board directed us to do is to take those, there are 8 areas, and there are boards around the room here behind you highlighting each of those 8 areas. But they asked us to spend a short amount of time, we're looking at September and October, to conduct this task force work and come back by the 1st of November with some reports and recommendations on those 8 areas. One of the other big accomplishments from last year was we developed a new mission and vision for Parkway School District and learning principles, and that should be in your handout tonight. The steering committee did the heavy lifting on that, and then we got input from the community in this setting and also at town hall meetings. So the mission and the vision, as Dr. Hudson will explain here in a few minutes, really does serve as the foundation for the plan that we're going to develop. That's the first thing we had to do, was to develop our mission and vision. All right. So for the large group, this group here, what is our work for this school year? It's really front-loaded, so it's heavy in working here in this fall. So for September and October, we hope you will consider joining one of the 8 task forces. If you can't do it, you can't do it. And you'll just come to the regular Project Parkway meetings, and that's fine too. If you can join one of the task forces, we'll ask you tonight to sign up for them, and we'll give you instructions on that a little later on how to do that. So your work will be in September and October primarily. Then we do have our next meeting is in October, where we'll come back and we'll have kind of a status update on the work of the task forces. So there is a general Project Parkway meeting in October. We have a town hall meeting in October. The town hall meeting is really for anyone in the general community who would want to come in. And this fall, what we'll be focusing on for the town hall meeting on the 21st is to get feedback on the draft goals that the steering committee are going to draft. So the steering committee will be drafting goals for Parkway at the same time as the general group is going to be working on those 8 task force areas. So we'll have one more meeting then on November the 15th of this group, and that's when we will hear the final reports from all the task forces on November the 15th. Then after that, this group will take a little bit of a break. We don't have a meeting in December. We have tentative meetings for January and February. The reason is we're essentially waiting then at that point. We've presented our reports and recommendations to the steering committee, and they are getting approval on the goals that have been developed. And then they're going to write the first draft of the 5-year plan. So we might meet in January or February. I know we've got those listed as tentative on your calendar. We feel confident by March we should be able to be ready. So we'll let you know. We will send you emails out so you'll know the status. And then we will have another town hall meeting in the spring. So this group will get to see the first draft of the plan hopefully in March, and then we'll have a town hall meeting to get additional input from the general community on the plan in April before we take it to the school board for consideration. So that's the large group for this year. The steering committee, so you see how their work fits in with it. This fall, as I mentioned, the steering committee will be writing the goals, drafting the goals while we're doing our task force work. We'll seek input on October 21st for the town hall meeting on those goals. We'll go to the school board to get approval on those goals, and then based upon that, the steering committee will draft the plan. Then in the spring, we'll seek the feedback from you all and also in the town hall meeting. And sometime around May and June timeframe, go to the board with the plan. I know it's tedious, but I felt like you all kind of had to see how this year fits in. And if you have questions on any of that, any of us who have the little steering committee name tags can help you out. Nikki Stover is somewhere in the room. You've probably gotten emails from Nikki along the way. Maybe she's up there. But Nikki is the one responsible for all the email traffic that goes out on the meetings and so forth. So feel free to ask her as well. So with that, I will turn it now over to Dr. Tim Hudson, who's our curriculum coordinator. Our mic is going bad.
Yeah. Thank you. Good evening. I am Tim Hudson. I'm the steering committee facilitator and the K-12 mathematics curriculum coordinator. And I'm very honored to be able to facilitate the steering committee at what is a very exciting time in Parkway. It's great to see you all here tonight and to have you be a part of this work. For those of you who helped out last year, there was a great deal of work accomplished that the steering committee really enjoyed poring over that 3-ring, 3-inch binder of copious amounts of great information that are laying the foundation for moving forward, and you'll see a lot of those things in the task forces tonight, like Paul mentioned. This is a broad scope. There's a broad scope to this work, and so I just want to take the next few minutes to help everyone make sense a little bit of how this year's work fits into the bigger plan of the work that we started, I guess, February of 2009 is when the steering committee first met. We in Parkway are poised and prepared to get our kids ready for an uncertain future. That's what we're here for. We have the tools, we have the expertise, and as has been mentioned before by Paul and Dr. Senti, is we're writing that strategic plan for the next 5 years. And the key thing is we don't want just goals on paper. We want things that move us to action. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go along. First, in case you're not familiar, we've been using the book Schooling by Design by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe. Grant Wiggins was here with us last year for the Project Parkway kickoff. How y'all remember him? Little white beard, talked about playing video games and things. Well, and some other things as well. We're using this book as our framework, and you'll see this house a lot, as you probably have. If you're first joining us here tonight, let me just run through it for you real quick. The foundation of our district, mission and vision, that what students are doing, this is the purpose for why we exist. We're a learning institution. And everything else flows from there. Only when we know what our mission is can we know what our curriculum should look like and how we should assess, how we should teach, who we should hire, how we should develop staff, and then what sort of policies, structures, governance, and how do we allocate our resources to accomplish the mission. If you look in that first page of your packet, like Paul referenced, open up to the first page, there is the mission, the vision, the draft of commitments, and the learning principles. We've developed through the steering committee a frequently asked questions list of about 20 different questions that's online for you to take a look at. If you have particular questions like, why isn't this in here, or how come this word is here, we took all of the feedback that teachers, faculty left for us online and in other different ways last year and compiled it into what we believe is a fairly coherent explanation for why these statements are the way they are. And what I shared with all the principals earlier this month is if you really wanted, just in a nutshell, to understand what the mission and vision statements are all about, just ask yourself, and this was a frequently asked question, why does our mission not say we're creating lifelong learners? And the answer that we have from the steering committee really is, what does a lifelong learner look like? If we were to set up a T-chart, and on this side we were to say, this is what lifelong learners do, this is how lifelong learners behave and how they act and how they speak, and this is what non-lifelong learners do and how they look like, I believe you would find most of our mission and vision in that column. So what we've really done is given some very specific information about what a lifelong learner looks like. So you can run that little test with yourself later on, be like, what do I think a lifelong learner looks like? Maybe jot down some ideas, compare what's on there. In order to really personalize the mission in some regards, what I'd like you to do is meet someone who you're sitting next to here in just a second. And I would like you, do you know everybody you're sitting next to? Anybody sitting next to a stranger? All right, you're going to meet somebody. With a neighbor. Share how you have personally and specifically done one of the following in 2010. So here are your options from the list of mission and vision. You were a curious learner. You were a confident learner. You responded to a challenge of the ever-changing world. You engaged in self-directed learning. You sought to understand the views, values, cultures of others. Or you better understood your talents and interests. There's 6 options there. So since January 1st, 2010, think of how you've done one of these things, and then take a moment and share it with a neighbor. Introduce yourself first, too.
new system in the end is done perfectly. But, like, right, not even there.
All right.
Like Mick Jagger does.
Yeah.
Not down like that.
Check. Test.
I'm just going to put this here just in case. That's usually what it is. It'll do the same. Yeah. You got to turn it on a whole 2 seconds.
Can they both go at the same time?
Yeah, they can both go at the same time. But I just want to put this up here just so that it's heading out.
Okay, have a good night. Take about another minute to wrap up your conversation. All right, go ahead and say goodbye for now to your new friends. Could we get someone to flash the lights on and off a little bit? That might work. I know. For me personally, and I'm sure, it sounds like there were a lot of great learning experiences out there. It sounds like we got some real lifelong learners in here, which is good. For me personally, I recently fixed the hot water in my kitchen sink because when we moved into the house last year, the cold water really just poured out like normal, but when you moved it to hot, it just came out a little stream, and I was curious why that might have been. So I confidently went to Home Depot, and now I have hot water coming out. So, long story. Anybody ever done some plumbing? All right, yeah. Okay, moving on. So, hope you all met some new people. Here's the thing, though. This is what our Project Parkway work and our mission is all about. Think of those statements that you were just thinking to yourself, okay, how have I done that over these past months? Here's how we define success. How will our students respond to these prompts in May? That's the question we want to ask our kids. How were you a curious learner this year in your grade, in your class, in your math class? How are you a confident learner? What self-directed learning did you take on this year while you were in Parkway? And this is where we take the mission and we put it into action. And we measure what we've said are our goals. So schooling by design, that's a key word, by design there. In the book they say not schooling by habit or impulse. And we would also want to add to that, or by inertia, fad, tradition, or whim. These are not how we want to school. On page 1 and 2 of the book, they say we're looking at a straightforward process of planning for orchestrating the key work of schooling and school reform backward from the mission and the desired results. That's what our work is all about. If this is the mission, then what does it imply? How do we have to plan? What makes Project Parkway different? We hear that question a whole lot. And I'd offer 5 different ideas. 1, focused on critical student outcomes. We've laid the foundation. We've defined our mission. We're planning backwards from the mission. We've included learning principles. That's a unique piece to other schooling type projects. Community engagement, like Paul was saying, we had 400 people last year. A lot of you here tonight, and I'm sure several more who aren't able to be here but will be joining our work. And awareness and ownership, that we're really trying to make sure that everyone understands and owns the mission. It's in the buildings. We're trying to make it actionable. That is our goal. Another way to think about what makes Project Parkway different are these things called Wordles. If you'll turn the next page in your packet, the next 2 pages contain 4 different what are called Wordles. And you can get them from Wordle.net. You can make your own. And here's how they describe it. Wordle is a toy for generating word clouds from text you provide. The clouds give greater prominence to words that appear more frequently in the source text. So what I did was, actually Nikki did it, kudos to Nikki, took our mission, capable, curious, confident, our vision bullets, and our learning principles, because if you read the learning principles, the students, again, they are the ones doing the action. We pasted those into Wordle and clicked make it or create or whatever it was, and that very first one on that first page is Parkway's new mission, vision, and learning principles Wordle. So you can see the words that are most prominent and occur most frequently in the source text. The other 3 that you have are also from educational institutions. So what I would like you to do, also with your new friend and neighbor, or you can turn to the other side if that conversation didn't go so well. We'll give you options here this evening. I'd like you to discuss 2 questions with your neighbor. How do Parkway's new mission, vision, and learning principles, that first Wordle, compare with the other educational institutions? And I'll tell you what they are later. And what does the Wordle reveal about the uniqueness of our new mission? What do you notice as you look at ours and compare it to others? So take a few minutes, look them over, and talk with your new friends. Just for clarification, of the 4 different word clouds, Parkway's new mission is just that first one, and then there are 3 distinct other ones.
Isn't that fun?
Myself and Kathy Blackmore, who you'll also be hearing from later this evening, we're just going to walk around. If you and your neighbors have something you'd like to have some answers to either of those 2 questions that you'd like to share with the group, things you noticed, flag us down.
What we're sharing with the group right now? Oh, okay. We thought that the Parkway mission statement had a lot of process words in it, and we like that because the focus should be on the process. Also, as compared to the other 3, you don't see, well, you do, you don't see student in quite the same focus, and that can be a good thing because it's a bigger body of people, including teachers and administrators, perhaps, that are learning.
Okay. All right.
We were looking at ours in particular has the word learning as our main word, and the others had the word student. And I think that that's important that Parkway is emphasizing learning of the students. And there was a couple of words, articulate and confident, that couldn't find in the other 2 or other 3. And I think those are very important aspects of the children's learning experience.
Anybody else?
Anybody else? Open mic. Oh, here we go.
We were focusing on the word challenges. A recent research report that I read about women going into the sciences focuses on that whole concept of challenges, and that for women in particular to understand that even though they are innately as smart as boys in the area of science, that even though they might not take to it naturally or as the biases perceive, it's the challenges that they meet along the way. If they overcome those first few challenges, then they are able to succeed better than previous generations of women. So challenge is a real important word in terms of valuing your intelligence and being able to use that intelligence to continue, but with perseverance along the way.
And we talked about in the bottom one that one of the prominent words is programs, and that just really stuck out rather than being, it seemed very prescriptive. And then in the other 2, on the second page, one thing that stuck out was the phrase support faculty habits, and we have focused so much on what is it about the students, and then the other prominent word there, knowledge. And although knowledge is certainly important, it really is about transfer of the knowledge that has been our focus with our discussions of mission and vision and learning principles.
Oh, Sandy. You get 2 microphones.
I also thought it interesting that, and I looked pretty closely, that in the other ones you don't see goals anywhere, and I think you got to have goals to get there, and I found that interesting, and also the learning aspect as opposed to the focus on students necessarily, but the learning I thought was very positive.
Any other noticings? All right. Well, yeah, I think ours highlighted understanding more than the others, and I think the word ideas showed up in ours, not others. And actually, Jenny, to your point, you can't see it on the black and white copy, but in color, actually, I did think it was funny it printed this way, but support faculty habits are 3 different words. And it wasn't just like that phrase showed up a lot. So you see the different colors if it were, but it played out that way, which creates some interesting food for thought. So the sources, the first one, like I said, is our new mission, vision, and learning principles, which the board adopted in June. The second one is actually Parkway's 2000-2001 goals and guiding principles. It was a document that we went back to on the steering committee and took a look at. The third one is actually a joint combination of Harvard and WashU. And the fourth one is a combination of surrounding districts to Parkway. That's what the fourth one is. That shall remain unnamed. But you can go pluck things off of their website and plug it in the Moodle and see what happens, right? So I do believe that this helps clarify some of the distinctions about our Project Parkway work and how our new mission is different. I shared this video with the steering committee and also with all the administrators, and it's a 2-minute brief video that when we talk about the challenges of an ever-changing world, I think in 1:49 seconds, this does a pretty nice job of characterizing some of the things that we, based on our own experiences, might not be considering as far as the world that our children are moving into. I myself have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and when I watch this video, it really impacts the way that I think about what we need to do in Parkway and in schools in the future. Diapers.com, anybody ever use Diapers.com to make a purchase? Today! Look at that. Do you love them? Well, one teacher I spoke with is a big fan of Diapers.com. But their distribution center is fairly unique. And so let's take a quick look at this.
The general belief prior to us going into business was that you really couldn't make it shipping low-margin products. It couldn't be done. When we first started shipping packages, we only shipped out of Gina's garage in Long Island. As we started to add more and more products, we recognized we have to continually push the envelope and look at new ways to impress customers. And really, it's all about making life easier for them. If we do this well, we will fundamentally transform the way people think about buying their everyday essentials. So the secret to cracking the code is to figuring out how you can ship everyday products to consumers very quickly. We decided to kind of leapfrog the normal approach and jump right from a manual picking system to a robotic system. And the productivity of any individual worker is incredible. They may have 15 to 20 robots actually retrieving products. Our efficiency went up by factors of 5 or 6. As an order comes into our website, we have a proprietary software package that runs, we call it Box'em, that takes every single product in that order and checks all combinations of it to figure out what is the optimum box to be used for that order. We have 20 different shipping boxes that we use. Most internet retailers ship in about 5 or 6. With our system, we specify exactly what box to use. They fit really snugly, and it's a better customer experience. They don't have a lot of excess material when the box arrives at their home. We had to work with the big shippers like UPS and FedEx, but we added on specialty shippers. For example, we use a shipper called OnTrack, which does all the populated areas in the West next day. So it's the service of next day air with a very efficient ground network, dramatically less cost. We will have every product in every category, and that's something that a CVS or a Walgreens just simply can't do. There are no trips to the store late at night. You don't have to wait in line. You don't have to worry about the product not being there. and the product is delivered overnight. When a customer places that first order, we want them to really think, why would I place an order any differently?
So you saw the little orange robots, right? As I think about implications for our math curriculum, it's not enough to perhaps have students take a look at a bunch of different shaped boxes and decide, oh, well, what larger box might these fit in? It's about telling a computer how to do that for any combination of boxes. I mean, that's a huge challenge, and companies are innovating. We asked her a question, how many people work in that warehouse, that distribution center? It was huge. Not a lot of people necessarily work there. What understandings, knowledge, and skills are required of our graduates to work for, start, run, or own such a company? I mean, these are some of the questions we have to be thinking about. So as we write our goals for 2011 to 2016, one of the things that the steering committee is working hard to do is to realize our overall primary goal are the student outcomes, the student learning. That is what we are working towards. At the same time, we have, and I call these sample supporting goals, these are the adult objectives. And let me give you some examples of these. First, we want our students to be capable, curious, confident, who can understand and respond to challenges. We've got the 10 vision descriptors. We've got the learning principles. We ensure learners are self-assessing. They understand what they're trying to accomplish. But alongside this, what are the adult objectives? Well, we want to honor the learning principles, assess the mission and vision, have safe, welcoming schools. We want curriculum and instruction to be of the highest quality, fiscal responsibility, tech infrastructure to support all of our technology needs. We have transportation goals, facilities goals, professional development. There are all these things over here that the adults are doing that are important goals for us to have in order to make sure that we're being most effective. At the same point, our overall goals are the student outcomes. So our work for this 2011-2016 strategic plan is going to, in some way, and we haven't really figured it out yet, sort of appropriately classify and measure these different goals for our kids and for our district. So here's another way to visualize it. When we talk about, like up here at this top level, after we've decided all these things, then we take a look at the resources we have to allocate. And the resources we have are finances, physical space, personnel, time. And for the Project Parkway subcommittees last year, we looked at a lot of those different ones. That was, a whole lot of the work, taking a look at some of those resources. Here is really the goals for students. And then this top part is kind of like the goals for adults. That's kind of in a nutshell way to characterize it. And our consultant who's been working with us, Grant Wiggins, he says often, don't measure offerings, measure impact on mission. We do want to have the best curriculum out there. I'd like to have the best math curriculum available for our kids in Parkway. At the same point, just because we have that best curriculum doesn't mean that it's accomplishing the goals for our students. And if it's not, then we have to relook at the curriculum once again. Don't measure offerings, measure impact on mission. So our key questions, how will we know when we can say mission accomplished? And how will our district goals and strategic plan for the next 5 years accomplish our mission? We want to take a look at our vision and what's the reality and what's the action that we're going to take. A lot of the subcommittees in 2009-10 doing a comprehensive audit of sorts. And the data collection task forces are really helping us come to an awareness of the situation. If the data indicate change is needed, then the next step would be to offer compelling alternatives, create the culture to support the changes, and establish structures to support the changes. And this is work that comes straight out of Grant Wiggins' framework. And so the task forces that are kind of a fix-it task force, like school climate and bullying, we had from last year's Project Parkway work, it was very clear that we need to do some things to address the levels of bullying. I think Facebook alone has completely revolutionized bullying in some regards. Some of you may have personal experience of that, but I think, Dr. Centi, were you saying what percentage of discipline referrals you see had Facebook references in them? It's like almost all of them these days. So that alone requires us to take a look at what we're doing and how we can do things better. So those are the two types of task forces. Finally, before I turn over to Kathy, there are some tasks without a new force. There are some things that came out of Project Parkway last year that we are working those tasks that the board would like us to continue working on within our existing structures. For example, the implementation of the curriculum, getting clear on what rigor means, differentiation, acceleration, taking a look at more assessment stuff, which we have committees for all of these things already, so they're not new forces. And then the technology integration. And I will now turn it over to Kathy Blackmore, our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability, to walk you through the task forces.
Okay, so if you would open your packet, maybe grab a pen if you don't have one. I literally am going to walk the room and point out the different task forces. Once I get through this, then your job will be to go and ask any questions of the people that you might be interested in joining in the work. When you're done with that, you walk up those steps, and we have a bank of computers up there and people to help you. You will be registering for a task force online. And your name will go right into the system, and you will be on a list, and you will be contacted very quickly about dates. But after we do this walk, ask any questions you have about meetings, how much time, what's the involvement, because it really is truly a task force with specific tasks to be completed in a short amount of time. So the first board over here we go. And task force leaders, would you join your boards? Just so they can see, they might decide if they like you or not, if they're going to join you. So smile, candy, whatever you got. Okay. I think names and faces, it really does help. All right, the first one right here is assessment, literacy, and communication. Okay, this is the first board, your first sheet of paper. I'd like you to look at the bold in the center of the page. That very succinctly tells you what the goal of this committee is. So let's take a look. The goal of this task force is to improve parent and student understanding of student assessment so that students will better understand the purpose and outcomes of their learning, as well as the standards required for success, and will use the feedback from assessments to improve their learning. Simply said, students told us last year, I don't always know why I'm taking this test. And I mean, and parents might have said the same thing about some of the standardized tests. If you look on the back of this one, it even lists who the ideal task force committee member will be. So really clear direction for this committee of what the work is ahead. Next to this table, and it's Kim Brandon and Joanne Miles. Y'all stand in front of the board. Gosh. Okay, here they are. They will be leading this task force. Our second one is led by Sandy Jacobs and Jenny Marquardt, and we are really looking forward to the work of this committee, the efficient use of existing resources, not only from our community, but from inside the district, getting really clear about, if you will, and it's not up there anymore, the top of the house. How do we use resources? How do we set goals before we do something and say, how will we measure its success? This will be the committee that will help establish that and also give the feedback to steering committee of how we're going to evaluate our current systems. Where I want to draw your attention is the fourth bullet down. Does our program evaluation model defined by the board policy tell us what we need to know? And then the next one, is there a way to create a metric for each staffing model or each division within the district? How will we measure success? That's what, not just that we had it. You know, it's really easy for, like Tim said about our curriculum, we can check that off. But is it effective? Does it impact kids the way we want it? This committee is going to help us bring models together so that we do that more efficiently. Then down here, the next task is called, I'm holding this right, y'all, Full Day Kindergarten. And this task force will be led by Elizabeth Mays and Kevin Mabey. And this, again, I highlighted the second sentence in the description. The half-day program is available to all students free of charge, while the full-day program is provided for a fee. This group needs more data. The board did not say, go fix it, make a decision. The board said, we need more data about full-day kindergarten, and this will be the committee's task. And if you look down, there will be another survey, more comprehensive survey on the fourth bullet down, and then the meetings. One thing I wanted to mention, too, about our task force facilitation is that it was really important that we had facilitators that were as neutral as they could be. And for some of us, we couldn't serve on any of these because we're not real neutral. And that's what the facilitation is about. What else do we need to know to make a good decision? So we really appreciate these leaders stepping up. The next one is one we've been asked, and I think some of you are in the room who asked me this question last year. So the steering committee decided to have this task force form. It is called Future Topics of Study. Erin Wills and Melissa Moulton will be leading this because where did those topics go as they come up? They came up last year in the current reality meetings. Where did they land? And this is really our visionary task force. What are we not looking into that probably we should be? And if it's not for the next 5 years, what about the next 5 years? It really is that visionary group. And you can look at, they want to identify important trends, and look what the bullets say. Represent different areas and grade levels of the district. These are big picture thinkers. If you're into detail and the why, when, how we're going to do it, this is probably not the committee for you. You like small group, you'll be sent out to look and read some research and really get a list going of future topics. Good? The next one is kind of a unique one in that it's out of order, so I'm going to keep going. Okay, I'll come back. Next one is length of school day and start times, Jason Rooks and Nan Johnson. I am at that first sentence. The first phase of the Project Parkway yielded information that suggests there is a need to further investigate the length of school days in Parkway as well as school start and end times. The driving question here is what are the most effective ways to structure time in order to accomplish Parkway's mission vision for all students. We have been talking about time in this district. Have you all been there with me the last forever and ever and ever? Everybody's nodding their head. This is the task force right here to look at this information. How do other districts do it? What do we need to do? And of course, how much will it cost, if there is a cost to it? Next one, Paul Tandy, standing alone, but you're not alone. Lynn Midyette from Special School District will be co-facilitating this committee with Paul Tandy. And this is one of those fix-its. Not only school climate, and to really look in the data that we had last year from our current reality Project Parkway, but also the issue that was just discussed about bullying. We don't want to wait, a year to figure that out. We want to really get into the data. We want to define what bullying is, if you look at the bullets. And the second one, determine baseline data needed and recommend a process for monitoring it. So how do we know it's occurring? How do we define it? How do we know it's occurring? And how do we do that check and keep our eyes on it and keep monitoring it? And that will be the work of this committee. The next committee is our school enrollment and boundaries, and it will be led by Desi Kirchhoffer and Ed Zumwinkle. And it is asking on that first sentence, this is a fix-it. The board has given us the charge that we give the board immediate recommendations to address overcrowding in the North Area elementary schools, as well as explore possible long-term solutions to address efficiency and equity among all Parkway schools. This is, as they all are, an important task force. What is unusual about this committee, if you'll look at the bottom, there is a task force that will be where the heavy lifting is. You'll have assignments, you'll have to get the work done, you will meet more often. Then there is an opportunity to sign up, and when you get up online, you'll see for this task force, it will ask you, task force or focus group. The focus group will get the information from the task force to give feedback. Is that clear? So there's a smaller working group meeting a lot, talking a lot, making, having dialogue around what needs to be done. They'll share it with a larger group of people, then that information goes to the task force. So when you go up there, talk to Desi and Ed, get really clear. Do you want that task force that meets a lot, or do you want to be the focus group that just keeps hearing the information? And then the last task force will come back over here. It's a little unusual. This is done, the teacher evaluation and development model. It's part of our work in Parkway. It is established in our teacher's agreement of how the committee is designed and how it works. So this particular group is at work and really has been last year during Project Parkway, and even before that. We've been, I would say, 1.5 years, 2 years looking at changing our teacher evaluation model. If you are interested in this particular task force, if you'll look at the bottom, they would like parents, other people in Project Parkway to come and give them feedback and input on the model that they're developing. So not as much commitment as far as time, but a really important part to the house. As you look up at the top of how we hire and develop and also evaluate our teachers. So those are the 8 task force that you have the opportunity to join. There's also a selection as you go up there and open up the survey. And Paul, I forgot how it's worded. Tim, does it just say...
It's right up here.
Oh. All right, let's look at this. Do you mind, Tim? Can you just skim through it?
Sure. First name, last name, email address, phone number. All your information is safe with us. Did that sound secure?
Yeah.
First choice, and here they all are.
Pick one.
What's that?
Pick one.
Yeah, pick one for your first choice. And you'll notice they're all here. Project Parkway general meetings. That was what Paul was referring to earlier, that if you don't have the time to give to one of the intense task forces, that simply coming on Monday nights, the Monday meetings, that would be that one. We have the 2 different school enrollment ones, the focus group, the task force. You could select none for your first choice, but that would be weird. And then second choice, same thing. Third choice, same thing. Here you could put none if you really, And then any optional additional comments, go to the bottom and click Finish Survey.
And we have our wonderful CRSs, and Steve and Mater in the tech department are up there to assist you in doing that. And before we dismiss to look and talk to the leaders, are there any other questions?
Then just to follow up, then what we will do, or Nikki will do, is a couple of days later, we will send an email back out. She will be sending an email to those Project Parkway participants who couldn't make it here tonight to let them have one more opportunity to sign up. And then so it'll take us a couple of days, but then after a couple of days, you'll get an email with your quote assignment, and if you have any questions or whatever, you can check with Nikki. And then we'll be off and running for the task forces.
One more quick thing about criteria and why we need first, second, third choice. As you heard on most of these, we are looking for representation throughout the district. It's important as we look at it, just not the north area on a particular task force. So that will be one of the things we look at. And then pure numbers of having enough people in each task force. But we'll get back to you, like we said, in a week. So for the good of the group, I'd like to thank Dr. Hudson for his part today. Thank you very much. Steve Van Mater, would you wave at everybody? Steve, can you hear me? Wave. That's Steve Van Mater, our Director of Technology, who set it up. Nikki Stover, if you have any question, that is the person to email. She will set us all up. And Paul Tandy, all right, be on your way. We're here for questions. If you know what you're doing, head up and sign up. We'll see you next time.